Hey everyone, Miss Rose from the LaGrange Park Library here. I'm going to teach you how to make some savory cheesy monkey bread. So let's wash our hands and get started. I have already washed my hands. So, got a couple things that we're going to use here. First of all, you're going to need 1 brick of Monterrey Jack cheese. I mean, you can really use any cheese, but this one has a good melting point, so it's nice and melty. You're going to need 2 loaves of Rhodes White Bread Dough. You can find this in the frozen section of your grocery store, usually with like the pie dough. And then you want to take it out the night before. You're going to take out 2 loaves and wrap them each individually in plastic wrap so they can thaw a little bit. And then these have actually been thawing for almost a little too long because they're a little too puffy. When we open them up, you're going to see they're going to expand a little bit more. What happens is when the dough thaws, it rises. So we're actually going to put this stuff together and then our dough is going to rise. You're going to need a teaspoon of dried basil, a teaspoon of dried oregano. You don't have to use those if you don't like these or if you have an allergy. You can substitute any dried herbs. You can leave the dried herbs off. It's your choice. And then you're going to need 1 stick of salted butter. If you don't have salted butter, it's okay. You can use unsalted and just throw a couple pinches of salt in there. We're going to melt this butter. It's good if you have a deep bowl like this because we're going to be dipping our pieces of dough in here. So I'm going to just melt this gradually. Start off with 30 seconds. We don't want it to be hot or anything like that. And while we're waiting for that, we can slice our cheese. We're going to slice this into 32 pieces. So it depends on how you want to do it. Just always be careful and ask an adult before you use a knife. I'm going to go this way to start. And you can take the cheese out a little bit ahead so it's a little easier to slice. They don't have to be perfect. I can hear my butter. Let's see. Okay, a little bit more. I'm going to do it in 10-second increments now. So I'll cut that lengthwise in half, and then I'm going to cut it this way in half. And then you just continue cutting in half and half until you get 32 pieces of cheese. And there is your math for the day, right? So now I have 8 on this side. And then we'll make this 16. I sometimes even buy an extra thing of cheese just because you want to eat a piece of this, but if you do, you'll be short on your cheese for your dough. So halves and halves and halves and halves. But then maybe sometimes you'll get a little slice like that and you can eat that. It's delicious. Okay. And as long as you have 32 pieces of about the same size, you're good. So I'm just going to put this off to the side and check the butter. Probably need another 10 to 20 seconds. The reason you want to do your butter gradually is because you don't want it to boil. You don't want the butter to separate either. Okay, let's put that off to the side. And now let's chop our dough. So you can see my cutting board is a very well-loved cutting board. I like to use this larger cutting board because we're going to have a lot of pieces. So, all right. When you thaw the dough in the fridge, it's good to make sure that it's laying flat and it's not on top of anything. Okay, now it's very sticky right now, but that's okay. Now there's 2 different ways to cut that. Check our butter really fast. Okay, we're good. Put that off to the side for a moment. So you can use a knife. I'm going to actually use a bread knife. The difference here is the bread knife is serrated and it's easier to cut bread with that. So I'm going to put this one off to the side. or you can do kitchen scissors. I prefer the bread knife, especially when the loaf has gotten this thick from defrosting, because it's hard to get the scissors through and hard to keep your pieces even. So we have 2 loaves, so each loaf is going to be 16 pieces. So we're just going to cut in half, and sometimes it's a little tough and it's a little sticky. That's okay. Just cut until you get it, and then just keep trying to get it off your hands. So then again, we're gonna do halves and halves and halves until we get what we need. So I'm gonna need 8 pieces out of this side. And then they stick back together, but they come right back apart. So then each of these is gonna be a half. And then I'm gonna just start to line those up on my cutting board so I can keep count properly. I've done this 1,000 times and I always lose count. This is a great dish to do for a family gathering. It's nice in the winter. We always have it at our family holidays. I have an old recipe that my mom had that we've been making for several years now. So I'm actually gonna go this way first. There, now I've got, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, okay. And here will be 16. You kind of want to keep the pieces a little separate just because they're gonna start to expand again and you don't want them sticking together. So you might be able to notice this one's got a little air bubble on it. That's okay. Just kind of fun. And then we take our second loaf and cut that as well. And there we go. Okay. So same thing, we need 16 pieces out of this. You can make your own dough if you like, but if you're like us and you're really busy before family events, it's just easier to get the frozen dough. Keep that back there. All right, I'm gonna finish cutting this and then I'll be back for the next part. Okay, we are back. We're all cut. A couple other things you're gonna need to make this. A bundt pan. If you don't have a bundt pan, that's okay. You can use a deeper sort of like baking pan, like something you'd make a loaf in, like a banana bread. You just want to keep your eye on it. It's not going to cook the same amount of time as it would in the bundt pan. The nice thing about the bundt pan is it lets the air come up through here and it cooks the middle a little quicker. Another thing that you need is some pan spray, because we'll spray that so things don't stick. A lot of recipes will tell you to spray your pan before you do anything. I like to wait until we're close to the end, otherwise some of it drips down. Okay, so now we're ready to mix our butter. So I've got my butter here. It is a little separated. That's okay, because we're gonna stir it up as we go. See? And then we're gonna just do a teaspoon of the dried basil. And I'm gonna do this over the sink so I don't spill any. Just adds a nice little flavor. You can smell it. There's a teaspoon of that, and then a teaspoon of the dried oregano. Same thing. You almost smell this. This one might be a little old. That's okay. The butter livens them up a little. So we add those and we stir it up. Now, as we do this, you're gonna need to stir it pretty frequently. Okay, so we are pretty much ready to start assembling. Now you can keep your hands bare do this, but you're gonna get them in the butter. So I usually like to wear gloves. It's just a little neater that way. I also have like a towel so I can wipe my hand on, and then we're all set. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of dough, you're going to take a piece of cheese, and you're going to wrap that dough around the cheese so that it's nice and tight. You don't want there to be a hole there. You want to make sure that dough comes together. Then just to kind of even them out, I like to roll them with my hands. And then we're going to stick them in the butter. Dredge it nice and neat. And then now is the time for us to spray our pan. I always spray my things over the sink so that things are nice and neat. And when you're doing the bun pan, you want to make sure you get that middle part too. If you're not doing a bun pan, just make sure you get in the corners. Okay, so oops, we're all set. And then we're gonna take this, kind of drip it off, and then we're gonna start arranging them in the bottom of the pan. You'll see them start to come together. So between each one, you might want to just wipe your hands a little so it's a little easier to work the dough. And then same thing, try to push out any air bubbles, roll it in the butter, add it to the pan. It's nice to keep that bowl right next to your bundt pan so that you're not dripping butter everywhere. You will still drip butter in a lot of places, but keep things neat for the most part. And if you don't have gloves, it does sometimes feel kind of nice on your fingers, especially if your fingers are dry in the winter. The butter helps moisturize them. So you're just going to do this with all 32 pieces. And then I'll show you the pan once we get the first layer done. Again, you're going to stir it up every once in a while. And you'll notice some pieces of dough are bigger than others, some pieces of cheese are bigger than others. So I try to save those larger pieces of cheese for the larger pieces of dough. Okay, and now you can see we filled the whole bottom of the pan. And now we're gonna, oh, we could probably fit one more in there. One more tiny one. Let's find a tinier piece of cheese. Okay. We are going to just start filling it in on top. It's not gonna be perfect, and that is okay. One. So I usually will start to fill it around the outside first. So this one I put, it's hard to kind of see. How do we do this? My hand's in the way. Let me try it like this. So then just kind of on the outside like this. And then you'll just keep going around and around. Okay, now you can see the pan is pretty much full. And now here is my favorite part. We have a little bit of leftover butter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pour that on top, because we can't let it go to waste, right? So just try to as evenly as you can. Again, not a huge deal if it's not perfect. Okay, now we have to let our dough rise. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take a kitchen towel, cover it up, and let it rise for about 2 hours, or until it comes up to the top of your pan. So I would check it, in about an hour and see how it's doing. And then we will be back. Okay, now the moment of truth. Let's take a look. Perfect. Okay, so you can see it's risen just above the level of the pan. And now we're going to bake it at 350 degrees for about half an hour. And one thing that is really interesting is sometimes it matters the color of the pan that you use. A lot of times these darker pans have a little bit more thickness to them and it helps things cook more evenly. If you don't have a darker pan, it's okay. The other one should work. Sometimes you just might want to keep an eye on it, but I'm going to pop this in for sure for half an hour, and then we'll be back to see what it looks like. Then 350 degrees for 30 minutes. All right, we'll be back. Okay, it's been 30 minutes in the oven and I've set it out to cool a little bit. If you have a wire rack like this, you can do that. Otherwise, it's okay. You can just cool it on top of the stove or bunch up a towel beneath it. But this is what it looks like when it's done. Very yummy. It smells incredible. And it's been cooling for a little, so it's cooled off so that I can handle it. And now what you do to get it out is you just kind of take a butter knife, and sometimes you don't even need to do this if you grease the pan well enough, but sometimes it's good just to give it a little run through. Sometimes a little cheese leaks out and gets caught. So we just do this to give it a little thing. I try not to stab into the pieces of bread. And then I have a platter here. We're gonna turn it out onto the platter. And there you have your monkey bread. And it's really fun. You just pull a piece right off, and that piece and its cheese should come out. You can always cook it a little longer if you like it to be a little more browned than this. I took mine out right at the 30-minute mark just because I know we're going to reheat this. This is going to be, it's easy to reheat too. So you can just pop the whole thing like this on a cookie sheet, just on a little bit of foil, and heat it up at 350 for 10 minutes again. Or you can even pop it in the microwave if it'll fit in the microwave. So that is your savory, cheesy monkey bread. And enjoy. Oh, and one more thing. So if you are not going to eat it all right away, I always refrigerate it. I just put it, break it up into pieces, put it in a Ziploc bag, refrigerate it, because there's cheese in it. Okay, now enjoy.